Hey everyone, so this is the iPhone 12 Pro Max, and in late 2025 this phone is now officially 5 years old. I mean, think about that for a second. 5 years in the world of technology is, well, it's basically an old phone, right? So the big question, the one we're here to answer is, can a flagship from 2020, even one as well built and as powerful as this was, still hang? Is it a smart buy on the used market today? Should you keep yours for another year? Or is it finally time to upgrade? In this video, we're going to be reviewing. We'll talk about what made this phone so special back when it launched, and if any of that still matters today. We'll cover the design and that display. We'll test its performance on the brand new just released iOS 26. We'll look at the battery, and I have a bit of a story there. The cameras, and of course we have to talk about what you're missing out on by sticking with a phone this old. By the end of this, you'll know for sure if this phone is right for you. Let's get into it. Before we get into how it performs today, I think it's really important to remember just how big of a deal this phone was when it launched back in 2020. The 12 Pro Max wasn't just another small yearly update. It set the blueprint for the modern iPhone for the next half decade. First off, this design. These flat surgical grade stainless steel sides were a huge throwback to the iconic iPhone 4 and 5, and honestly, it still looks and feels incredibly premium today. Apple basically used this exact design language for years after this, which is a huge reason why it hasn't really aged a bit visually. This was also the very first phone with ceramic shield on the front glass. Apple made this big claim that it had 4 times the drop performance of previous models, and you know what? After 5 years, and looking back at all the drop tests and forum discussions, it's clear this was a genuinely huge leap in durability. The front glass on these things is just remarkably tough. Then there were the internals. This was the first iPhone lineup with 5G connectivity. It was a bit of a double-edged sword that we'll talk about later, but it was a landmark feature that future-proofed the device. And maybe most crucially, this was the first iPhone to ship with 6 GB of RAM. That might sound like a boring spec, but trust me, that extra RAM is a massive reason this phone is even remotely usable with an advanced operating system like iOS 26 today. And then there was the camera. This wasn't just a bigger version of the iPhone 12 Pro. The Pro Max model specifically got a 47% larger main camera sensor and the introduction of sensor shift stabilization. That's basically in-body stabilization that you'd find in big professional mirrorless cameras. It was also the first phone that could shoot, edit, and watch video in Dolby Vision HDR. These weren't gimmicks, they were foundational Pro features. When you put all of that together, the new design, the tougher screen, the 5G, the extra RAM, and the exclusive camera hardware, you realize this phone wasn't just an incremental step, it was a major platform shift. And that powerful foundation is the entire reason we can even have a serious conversation about using it 5 years later. But of course, there are some real downsides, like the display, which we need to talk about right now. Holding it now, in late 2025, the build quality is still absolutely top-notch. The substantial weight, the cool feel of the textured matte glass back, the clicky tactile buttons, it feels every bit as premium as a brand new phone. This specific blue color has also held up beautifully over the years. The 6.7-inch Super Retina XDR display is still gorgeous too. It's a high-resolution OLED panel, so your colors are vibrant, blacks are perfectly deep, and it gets plenty bright for use in direct sunlight. But, and this is the biggest but with this phone, it's a 60 Hz panel. In late 2025, this is probably the most jarring part of the entire experience. Every single Pro iPhone since the 13 Pro has had a 120 Hz Pro motion display, which makes everything feel incredibly fluid. And while iOS 26 itself has these beautiful new animations, you just can't escape the fact that scrolling through articles, swiping between home screens, it just doesn't have that liquid smooth feel you get used to on modern flagships. It's the phone's Achilles heel, no question about it. What's really interesting is that the new liquid glass design language of iOS 26, with its heavy emphasis on fluid motion and physics-based animations, almost makes the 60 Hz limitation more obvious than older, flatter versions of iOS did. The software itself is designed to look and feel incredibly smooth, but the hardware can only refresh the image 60 times per second. It creates this weird disconnect where you can see the beauty of the new OS, but you can't fully feel it. It's like the software is writing checks that the display hardware can't quite cash. Okay, so let's talk performance, because this is running the stable public release of iOS 26, which just dropped a few days ago. And honestly, I'm blown away by how good it is on this 5-year-old hardware. Apple has clearly done some serious optimization work. This new liquid glass aesthetic is everywhere. The icons, the notifications, the control center, it's all semi-translucent and has this really cool depth effect that reacts as you move the phone. I really like it. It makes older versions of iOS, let's say iOS 18, feel a bit dated and flat by comparison, and on this phone it's surprisingly smooth. For all the day-to-day stuff, opening apps, browsing in Safari, scrolling through social media, the A14 Bionic chip is still very capable. Apps open pretty quick, yeah, not as instantaneous as the newest iPhones of course, but you're not sitting around waiting for things to load. Swiping between apps is smooth, and that's where that 6GB of RAM really comes in clutch. Multitasking is great. Apps stay open in the background for a long time without needing to reload, which makes the whole experience feel much more fluid. I did run Geekbench 6 and the results are pretty interesting. I got a 2180 on the single core test and a 5242 on the multi-core test. For a 5-year-old chip, that's honestly still fantastic. It shows just how far ahead Apple Silicon was back in 2020. But you know, benchmarks don't tell the whole story. What about gaming? I've played a bunch of demanding titles, things like Wuthering Waves and Call of Duty Mobile, and it's playable for sure. But this is where you really start to see the age of the A14 chip. On high graphic settings, you will see frame drops, especially after playing for 15-20 minutes as the chip heats up. And yeah, the phone gets pretty warm to the touch, right around the logic board area. It's clear that newer phones with more advanced cooling systems like the vapor chambers found in the latest models have a huge advantage for sustained gaming performance. Now for battery life, I have to be totally transparent here. This is not the original battery. I had it replaced by Apple in early 2025, so it was fresh at 100% back then, and now towards the end of the year, it's sitting at a very healthy 95%. I also need to mention that this isn't my main daily driver. It's mostly a backup phone and a device I use specifically for testing beta software and making these review videos. So my usage is a bit sporadic. Sometimes I'll use it heavily for a day, and then it might just sit on my desk for a couple of days. With all that said, with this new battery, it's a solid all-day phone for casual to moderate use. If you're thinking of buying one of these in 2025, a battery replacement is absolutely non-negotiable. Don't even think about using one with a degraded battery. It'll just be a frustrating experience with constant trips to the charger, but with a fresh battery, it's perfectly fine. You'll get through a full day without any issues. The camera is one of the main reasons you'd still consider this phone even today. That triple 12 megapixel setup with wide, ultra-wide, and telephoto lenses is incredibly versatile. And you have to remember the Pro Max model has that bigger main sensor and the sensor shift OIS, which gives it a real hardware advantage for low light photos and video stability that even the regular 12 Pro didn't have. In good light, the photos are still fantastic. They're sharp, have great colors, and that classic reliable iPhone look. The 2.5x telephoto lens is also really useful for getting tighter shots and for taking portraits with natural compression. And having the option to shoot in Apple ProRAW gives you a ton of flexibility. If you're someone who likes to edit your photos in an app like Lightroom, video is also a huge strong point. Shooting in 4K Dolby Vision HDR at up to 60 frames per second was groundbreaking back then, and the footage still looks amazing when you watch it back on a compatible display. The stabilization from the sensor shift system is also excellent, making your handheld videos look smooth and steady. But you can't ignore 5 years of progress. Newer iPhones with their 48 megapixel main sensors can capture way more detail, and their telephoto zoom capabilities are just on another level entirely. Low light performance, while good for its time thanks to that big sensor, has also been surpassed by the sheer computational power and improved image processing of newer chips. It's still a great camera system, but it's no longer at the top of the mountain. Okay, let's talk about something you need to consider: software. This phone runs iOS 26 and it runs it well. You get the new design, the new features in the phone app, and all the core updates, but it does not have Apple Intelligence. Apple's entire suite of new on-device AI features requires an iPhone 15 Pro or newer, and the main reason for that seems to be RAM. Those complex language models require at least 8 GB of RAM to run efficiently on device, and this phone has 6 GB. And honestly, for me right now, it's not a deal breaker. And here's why. Apple Intelligence by now is still on its early legs. It's cool, and the system integration is nice, but it's not fully baked yet. So I usually find myself using alternatives that are more powerful anyway, like Gemini or ChatGPT, and those apps work perfectly fine on this phone. So am I missing out? A little bit on the convenience of having it built in? Sure. But on raw AI capability? Not really. Alright, let's be real. This is a 5-year-old phone. So before you make a decision, here are the things you absolutely need to consider. Number one, as I've said, is the 60Hz display. If you're coming from any modern phone with a high refresh rate, you will notice it immediately. It's the biggest single compromise you have to make with this phone. Number two, it's not a top-tier gaming phone anymore. It gets warm and it will throttle its performance under heavy sustained loads. Casual gaming is perfectly fine, but if you're a hardcore gamer who wants the best performance, you should look elsewhere. Number three, that first generation 5G modem is known to be less power efficient than the ones in newer iPhones. It can get the phone warm and drain the battery faster when you're on a 5G signal for a long time. So that's something to keep in mind. Number four, and this is a big one for convenience, is the Lightning port. In a world where pretty much everything, including newer iPhones, MacBooks, and iPads, has moved to USB-C, you're still stuck in the Lightning ecosystem. It means carrying an extra cable and not being able to borrow a charger from most of your friends. It feels a bit dated in late 2025 for sure. And finally, number five is the software ceiling. It's amazing that this phone got iOS 26, but let's be honest, this could very well be its last major OS update. You're likely looking at another year or two of security patches after this, and that's probably it. So who is this phone for in late 2025? I think it breaks down into three groups. For the person thinking of buying one, if you're on a budget and you find a great deal on a refurbished model with a new battery already installed, I think it's a fantastic value. You're getting a timeless design, a premium build that feels amazing, a beautiful large screen, and a camera system that is still incredibly capable for photos and videos. As long as you can live with the 60Hz display and you're not a hardcore gamer, it's an absolute steal. For the person who already owns one, if you're still rocking an iPhone 12 Pro Max and you're generally happy with it, there is very little reason to upgrade, seriously. If your battery is feeling weak, spend the money on a replacement, not a whole new phone. It will make it feel brand new again, I promise. You're running the latest OS, the performance is still solid for everyday life, and the camera is great. Stick with it and save your money. And finally, for the person who is confused about whether to upgrade, ask yourself what your biggest frustration is. Is it that the scrolling doesn't feel perfectly smooth? Then yes, upgrading to a newer Pro model with a 120Hz ProMotion display will be a huge noticeable improvement for you. Is it that you can't zoom in as far as your friends with their new phones? Then the newer camera systems with their advanced telephoto lenses will be a big step up. Are you a tech enthusiast who just has to have the latest AI features integrated into the OS? Then it's probably time to move on. But for everyone else, this phone is still wonderfully, impressively capable. Ultimately, the iPhone 12 Pro Max has aged incredibly gracefully. It's really a testament to Apple's hardware and software philosophy that a phone from 2020 can still be this good, this relevant 5 full years later. It's found a new life, not as an aging flagship, but as a king in the refurbished market. But that's just my experience after using it. I'd love to hear from all of you. Are you still using an iPhone 12 Pro Max in 2025? Are you thinking of buying one? What are your thoughts? Let me know down in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.